can't start a fire. You can't start a fire without a spark.
Jy gee op. Jy vergeet om jou vlam in die gang te hou. Jy bevel jou brandende hart om terug te hou, te bedaar vir nou. En ons almal weet die tendens van 'n onbewaakte, geïsoleerde vuur is om uit te brand. So hou jou vuur dop. Hoe lyk hy? Hoe lyk jou hart?
Die hart, sê die Woordeboek, is 'n spierorgaan wat verantwoordelik is vir die pomp van bloed deur die bloedvate deur middel van herhaalde, ritmiese samentrekkings. Wetenskaplikes meen die algemene mens se hart met 'n slag van 72 slae per minuut sal ongeveer 2.5 miljard keer klop tydens 'n leeftyd van 66 jaar.
Vuur, sê die Woordeboek, is die sigbare lig en voelbare hitteverskynsel wat voorkom as 'n brandbare stof by hoë temperatuur 'n oksidasiereaksie ondergaan. Lig en hitte. Dis wie ons gemaak is om te wees. Disippels met brandende harte.
Wat die donker ligter maak, wat winter minder bitter laat, but you can't do it without a spark. So, wat is jou spark? Soms word ons so vasgevang in 'n geroutineerde, geïsoleerde bestaan en wanneer jy iets konstant herhaal, verloor dit sy betekenis. As jy net wakker word, dan sal jy eendag vergeet hoekom.
Maar wanneer jy voel jy verdrink, kyk na die glimlag van 'n kind. Hê 'n betekenisvolle gesprek met 'n vriend of 'n vreemdeling. Vind 'n spasie waar jy op 'n manier kan bedien, want sien, daar bestaan iets soos community. En waar daar twee of meer ontmoet, daar is die teenwoordigheid van Jesus.
So laat musiek jou skoene word en die woord jou oogkleur. Die Heilige Gees die vuur op die altaar van jou hart.
Hoe lyk jou vuur? Hoe lyk jou hart?
Hoor jy?
Saam met wie is jy?
Wat vertel jy?
Waarheen gaan jy? Kan ons mekaar iewers binne die chaos kry?
Imagine how we could set this world on fire. En nie om te verwoes nie, maar om die broodnodige lig en hitte vir hierdie wêreld te wees.
Die Woordeboek sê jou hart klop bloed,
maar glo jy jou hart klop purpose?
Good morning, friends. It's always good to be with you, and it's good to be with you today. I'm going to read, as I usually do, I'm going to read from the Gospels. I'm not going to read the whole story of those two Emmaus pilgrims on the road. You know the beginning of the story. They are on their way to Emmaus, they're talking together, and as they walk along, a stranger comes alongside of them, and they begin to have a conversation with the stranger. Through from verse 29 onwards. But they urged him, the stranger, strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening, and the day is almost over." And so he went in to stay with them. And while he was at the table with them, he took bread, he gave thanks, he broke it, and began to give it to them. And then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And he disappeared from their sight. And they asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Turned at once to Jerusalem, and there they found the 11 and those with them assembled together and saying, "It is true, the Lord is risen and has appeared to Simon." And then the two told what had happened on the way and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. While I was preparing for this message today, I came across a rather tragic report. Some years ago, a university student, I won't name the university, a university student, third year, took his own life. And you can well imagine that when something like that happens within a university context, it's quite a shocking event. The dean of students opened up an inquiry. She wanted to get to know a little bit about the student, what he was like, whether he showed any of anxiety. And so she began a process of interviews. She interviewed some of his lecturers in the subjects that he took. She interviewed some of his classmates who sat with him in the lecture hall. She interviewed some of the people who lived in the same university residence on the same floor. And as she went through these interviews, she made a very, very painful discovery. None of these people that she interviewed knew much about this student. That even though for almost 3 years he had been surrounded by students and by lecturers, deep down he was a stranger about him. I don't know why that story touches me so deeply. I think it touches me because it reminds us, that we live in a world that is filled with strangers. That even though we are so often surrounded by people, we can be strangers to each other. We can work as colleagues in the same company. We can live in the same complex, the same street, the same country. We can play for the same sports team, belong to the same club. We can sit in the same classroom, in the same lecture hall. We can live together sometimes in the same home and sleep in the same bed and still be strangers to each other. And I just find that very painful. I was talking to a mother the other day. She has a child who's just reached adolescence. I said I would pray for her. She said to me, Trevor, I don't know, but I don't know my son anymore. It's like he's a stranger in this house. And I can understand that. It's against this backdrop, friends, this world that is filled with strangers, that I want to extend to you today a very sharp challenge. And it's the challenge for those of us who call ourselves by the name of Christ to reflect God's loving heart of hospitality to those around about us. Has it ever struck you how hospitable our God is? Think about the very first thing that God does in the Bible. The very first thing. At the beginning, there's just God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, together. And then God creates and makes space, creates room for. It's hospitality. That's radical hospitality. Think of what the risen, ascended Jesus Christ is doing right now. Right now, John chapter 14, he has gone on ahead of us, I quote him, to prepare a place for us in our Father's home. That's hospitality. Think of, just for a moment, of what God did when God came to this earth in Jesus Christ, and through his life and through his death and through his resurrection made it possible for those of us who are strangers to become friends with him. That's what God did. He did everything possible, everything needed, everything necessary through the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ into God's presence. It's hospitality. I used to sing as a 17-year-old when I first became a follower of Christ. I used to sing a chorus, "There is room at the cross, there is room at the cross. Even though millions may come, there is still room for one more." Hospitality. The hospitable heart of a loving God. And the challenge is for you and me to reflect that heart to those that we work with, to those that we live with, to those that we play with. And so the question is, and it's an important question, you may be saying, Trevor, how do we do that? How do we begin to reflect something of God's hospitable heart to people? And it's a question that I've lived with. And I've immersed myself in that story, that Emmaus Road story, those two pilgrims walking along the road, and then a stranger comes. It's a very moving story. Read about it again. Luke chapter 24. And as I've lived in that story for a few days, some things have become clear. And I want to share them with you very simply, very simply. God will stir us up today to respond to this challenge, to reflect God's heart of loving hospitality. I think we begin to reflect God's hospitable heart when we make room, when we create a safe space for people in our own presence. That's what those two pilgrims did on the road as they were walking along. They were having a conversation with each other. A stranger came and they made room for the stranger. They created space for the stranger so that the stranger could become part of the conversation that they were having. That's where gospel hospitality begins. It doesn't begin with an action. when we're able to communicate to people around about us, you can be at home in my presence. I don't want to change you. I don't want to fix you up. I don't want to sort you out. You can make yourself at home. You are welcome in my presence. That's radical gospel hospitality. Can you imagine, just for a moment, if we were able to do that in our homes? For each other. If parents could communicate to their kids, you are safe in my presence. Some homes are not safe. You're safe in my presence, whether you succeed or fail, whether you make it or whether you don't make it, whether you get selected for the team or you don't get selected for the team. You belong here. I don't want to change you. I don't want to fix you up. Make yourself at home in my presence. What a gift that is to a child. What a gift it is when partners can do that for each other. How often do partners want to change each other, fix each other up? And somehow if we can communicate to the most intimate partner in our life, make yourself at home in my presence as you are. Wouldn't it be wonderful if as a church, to people who are on the outside, come and be at home here. We're not going to try sort you out, change you, fix you up. We leave that to God. That is the work of the Holy Spirit. Our job is to welcome you. It's a wonderful gift. You gave me that gift. You welcomed me, received me. It's a wonderful gift. Can we give it to others? Can we become known in this community as a safe space where we want to make room for people? What a gift. What a gift. That's God's kind of hospitality. But we can take another step. We express God's hospitality when we take the risk, and it is a risk, when we take the risk of connecting, of coming a little closer, just a little closer to each other. And it's risky stuff. And we notice that the two are walking along and they come to a fork in the road. Do you remember that moment? It's in verse 29. And then they turn to the stranger and they say to the stranger, "Come home with us, come home with us." That was a risk. The stranger could have said no. But they took a risk. They connected. It's always risky. The risk of going across to a stranger and saying hello, that's risky stuff. Beginning a conversation, asking a question, where are you from? Do you have a family? What brings you here? That's risky stuff. It's risky. It's risky. Like to have coffee? You'd like to come to our group? You'd like to come to worship on Sunday? Risky stuff. Hospitality is always risky. Can you imagine now? I'm not going to ask you to do this, but can you imagine if I were to say to you, folks, after the service, we're not allowed to speak to anyone we know. We're only allowed to speak to people we don't know. If you have tea or coffee with anyone, It's only with strangers. If you speak to anyone between here and your car, just with people you don't know. Huh? Every one of you would race to your cars as soon as you can. It's risky stuff. It's risky. But can you imagine if today you did say hello to someone? Can you imagine if today you did start a conversation with someone that you've never had a conversation, and you just came a bit closer, a bit nearer to each other? That's expressing strangers becoming slowly friends. But there's something very beautiful. I want to go back to the story. This is the last thing I want to say. When we begin to express God's kind of hospitality, Christ becomes real. Our hearts begin to burn. Our faith comes alive. And that's what happened. Do you remember in the story? They invite the stranger home. They sit around a table. The stranger takes bread, breaks it, and in that moment, Christ becomes real for those who expressed hospitality. Christ became real for them. If they had not expressed hospitality, they would have missed Christ. Earlier this year, Debbie's the woman I'm married to, and I decided to do some hospitality. We decided to invite 5 couples. 2 couples from Mosaïek and 3 couples from Benoni to come to our home for 6 Tuesday nights. Now, this was a radical step for Debbie and I. We are radical introverts. When we have guests, we take turns in going to the toilet just to get some headspace so that we can come back and re-engage with energy the conversations. Not easy, this for us, not easy. We're going to have 10 people. They don't know each other. They don't know each other. And we're going to explore together what it means to grow older with God. That's weighty stuff. Debbie and I said to the couples, look here, we're not experts. We're not gurus. We just grow in old and we want to learn. We want to learn together with you. We want this to be a place that is safe, and we can begin to share some of our hopes and dreams and fears. And we began the journey. Together we spoke about the realities of growing old. We spoke about how to stay thankful as we grow older. We spoke about our losses and our diminishments that get more and more as we get older. We spoke about the contribution that we can still make to this world. We spoke about our feelings towards death and dying. And over these Tuesday nights, we saw people connect. And we watched Christ become real, and how the Spirit of God begins to move and touch people and change people and transform people. That's what happens. When we get nearer to each other. Can I invite you to take a step today to get nearer to each other? Do you have a place where you can talk a little bit more deeply about your faith? About what you're going through? Do you have a place? Let the table get smaller. Find a life group. Speak to someone at the reception today and say, sign me up, sign me up. I want to go on a journey with some other people. miracles happen. Christ becomes real. Christ becomes real. Faith comes alive. Hearts begin to burn. Let me end. We worship, and I want you to know this today. We worship a God We worship a God who has come to us in Jesus Christ, and who in Jesus Christ has done everything necessary for you and I to come to God, to no longer be strangers, but to become friends. There is room at the cross, there's room at the cross, and even though millions may come, one more can come again today. Come home, the doors are open. Come home. You don't have to tidy yourself up first. You don't have to get it all right. Just come home. God says to you and to me, you're welcome home. And then as we come home, we have a challenge to reflect the hospitable heart that we've experienced. We have a challenge to now reflect that heart to other people. And we do that very simply in our presence, by taking a few risks in connecting with people, just a few risks. And then as we do that, Christ becomes real. Our hearts begin to burn. Our faith comes alive. And we are no longer strangers. Let's pray together. Oh God, give us a glimpse today of your heart. Your broken, open, wide open, hospitable heart. Give us a glimpse. Give us the faith, the confidence, the trust we need to just come home to you.